Hi Michael, thanks a million for agreeing to do this exit interview with us this morning. So just to kick us off, I'm going to ask you, as you step away from your role as Chief Operating Officer, maybe can you take us back to the beginning? What brought you into the HSE IT department?
So look, thanks Joyce, and I'm really happy to do this interview. I kind of feel lucky and privileged to be able to do this. Not so many people get to do this, so thanks to yourself and the team for facilitating it, first of all. Look, it depends where you want to start. If I go back right to the very start, I've had, since I started my working career almost 40 years ago, it's 40 years ago this coming summer, I'll just about make 40 years, 39 of those will be in the public or civil service. And I've had many different really exciting and roles across the civil and public sector. I counted up this morning, I've been 12 different grades I've served in. The first two of them at least don't exist and haven't existed for a long time. I started right at the very bottom. And even before that I worked in part-time jobs and in many kind of some private sector jobs even before I came in. So I've had a long and varied career. But in terms of the kind of the HSE and the COO role, what brought me into that was when I trained as a computer programmer with the Revenue Commissioners in about 1993. And that was my introduction to the world of IT. And I suppose my career kind of took off after that. And, I'll move fairly swiftly along. And about 5 years later, I came into the HSE, or the North Eastern Health Board, as it was at the time. And many roles then led me to the COO. What I will say about the COO role, though, is, I talk about the 39 years that I've done. Actually, 20% of my career has been spent as the COO. And it's been a huge privilege, it's been a huge honour. I've really loved it. I've loved working with the team, I've loved working with yourselves in the team, with the team around me. It's been a really good job, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. It's such a good job to have. And so there's a sadness with leaving it, but I'm so proud of having done that job.
Looking back on your tenure, Michael, what would you say were the key priorities for you when you first took up the role, and how have those evolved over time?
Well, the first thing to say, Joyce, is that I did have key priorities, and it's something that stood me really well in the role, was to be clear about what I wanted to get done. You can be clear over a period of time, so I was pretty clear about what I wanted to do. We were, if you remember, at that time, I'm talking about 2017 here, about this time of the year, 2017, when I started as the COO. And I was, and still am, to date, the first COO for the technology organisation. So we were a much smaller organisation. We had about 250 staff, and we were still to a certain extent disparate around the country, and certainly in how we operated. So for me, the things that I kind of prioritised were growth of the organisation, to try to help build an organisation, a technology organisation that was fit for, I won't say fit for purpose, because we were fit for a certain purpose, but fit for other purposes. So that's the first thing. Then there was the financial, and I will say, financial excellence seemed a long way away at the time. It was financial coherence of the division, to pull it together as a single financial unit, so to speak. And the third piece was around strategy, and that took a little while longer to get to. What was the strategy that we were actually to try to initiate or start the thinking around, get people, to put time and effort into what was the strategy going to be, right? And we've had a few goes at that, in fairness. So I would say, broadly speaking, three things, Joyce: financial coherence, growth of the organisation, fit for purpose, and strategy, the long term, what were we going to do? They were kind of my priorities and my guiding light. And obviously, different daily, weekly, monthly, annual priorities come and go, but it's actually really important, I think, that you have your own guiding set of priorities. This is what I want to get done in this job.
What would you see as maybe your most significant, or maybe more than one, significant initiatives you've overseen during your time in this role as COO?
So probably a few things will stand out for me, Joyce. Again, if I suppose just to go back to where we were talking about a minute ago, way back to 2017 or 18, and you remember you and I put together a 7-year workforce plan, which came off the baseline, I say, of an organisation of about 250 people. And I think everyone thought we were, let's be honest, which is stark raving bonkers when we did that, because we had an ambition to fill and create and fill 750 new roles over 7 years. And I think even you and I were probably surprised, let's be honest with you, when we actually completed that about 5 years later. And then we have our whole contractor workforce. So that was a real achievement. We did that, and we actually made a massive difference to this organisation. If I look then maybe just at some of the technology side, and as you know, the COO role is not in the delivery of project space, but nonetheless has an active role across a number of things. One of the things I'm very proud of most recently, in fact, is the O365 mail migration program. And it's actually it's the single biggest user-facing platform that we have. It has 70,000 plus daily users, right? So very proud of that. And there's other phases and strands of that piece of work to go as well, but to have that as the most commonly used platform across the HSE is really, really good, and I'm really proud of that. Other things that stand out, maybe not so much initiatives, but just things we had to do, as we know, which is like the response to COVID, and the response to cyber, which is not something any of us really want to remember, but it is something we can all be really proud of, and I'm really proud of how we responded to cyber. And the other thing I have to kind of keep calling out is, which was an initiative, was the building the trust with our funders, with the CEO level, with the kind of C-suite as they call it, SLT, with the department, building the trust over time that we could deliver, that when you gave us money, we didn't squander it, we didn't waste it, we showed you what we spent it on, we didn't overspend it. And over those period of years, as we grew through the workforce plan, we also grew the financial might of the organisation, which at the time, when we had 250 people, and we had a budget of about 50 million at the start of my tenure, and that's grown now. We're effectively a $500 million organisation now, and 15 or 1600 people. So as I say, we were fit at the time for one purpose, which, if I put it bluntly, was just about life support. That's the purpose we were fit for. We're fit for a very different set of purposes now. We're fit for transformation and making a real difference to the organisation.
Look, we all know no leadership journey is without its challenges. What were some of the biggest hurdles you feel you faced as COO, and how did you navigate those?
So look, working in the HSE, it's sometimes said we all have many. You have your boss, but you have actually got many bosses. There's a lot of people who have demands on you, and that's fair enough. And there's the department, and there's even now maybe a couple of additional departments in. So, we all have many bosses, right? And if I just look back, as I have been doing in the last couple of days, Joyce, and prep for this, over the last kind of 7 or 8 years as COO, we had multiple CEOs, including the people who, maybe did actings or interims for a while. We've had multiple CIOs, including myself, because I did acting for a little while during that period as COO. I think it was up around 6 or 7, actually. We've had now a couple of CTTOs, the new role that John Ward was in for the previous 2 years, and Damien has now taken up the reins of. So there's been a fair amount of senior leadership change, and people bring their different approaches and their different priorities. So one of the things I think, again, that has served well is clarity of purpose, guiding lights about what it is you want to do, and I wanted to do it. That's what I always had as COO. That doesn't mean you don't flex, you're not agile. A new minister takes over, a new CEO takes over, a new CIO takes over, whatever it is, and they have priority, you've got to flex. However, you can't be blown completely off course. You've got to have clarity of purpose and consistency of vision, and that way you'll maybe deliver over a period of time what it is, what those priorities that you would have coming into the job. And that's what I feel maybe that I've done, although the job is never complete. And that's another thing. I don't walk out thinking, well, I've done that, because there's loads more to do. That would be for somebody else to do.
How has the operational side of HSE technology and transformation evolved in recent years, would you feel? And, what role would you feel your team played in driving that change?
Yeah, so look, it's evolved hugely, Joyce, over those years. Operationally, we were quite immature, I would say, back then, and there was very strong, good reasons for that. And I've spoken about some of those, and we were fit for a certain purpose. I think that we have, between us, yourself, the wider team, all of us in COO, we've built a function now that has always had operational excellence as a watchword. And okay, that sometimes seemed a little bit far away, and sometimes, again, like I say, same as finance, it was operational coherence first, with an eye to operational excellence. But I do think now for a period of time that we have achieved operational excellence. That's not to say you ever sit on your laurels and it's the other guiding light. You're always trying to get better and better and better, because the thing that's brilliant this year seems a bit old and tired next year. So you've got to keep getting better. And I think we've always had that as our watchword.
Michael, what lessons would you say you've learned from your time in the COO role that you would perhaps pass on to your successor?
Well, look, the first thing I'd say, Joyce, there's loads and loads of lessons, right? But the first thing just to say is that I do strongly believe that the talent and experience to fill the role exists within our department already. It exists within our team. So, and I'm actually quite proud of that we actually have that strength and depth there in that space. Now, the next thing is for whoever takes on the role, they'll do it in their own way and with their own perspective, and that's actually really important. You know, there doesn't need to be a Michael Mark II. There's enough Michaels around at this stage anyway. But you know, somebody will come up from their own perspective, and that's exactly the right thing to do. So look, I would say if asked by my successor, because I'm not going to be offering any unsolicited advice, but if asked, there's a few things I would say, just broadly speaking, first of all, is for whomever goes into this role, own the role, sort of be the role, take it over. That, you know, sometimes I say as well, like, plant your feet, stick your elbows out. It's your role. Do it your way, and you know, you'll find your way through it. Trust yourself, trust your guiding lights, and I say be consistent and go for them. You know, it's going to be busy, it's going to be full on. Do not panic. Sometimes you'll think it's a really important skill actually in this role, is do not panic, do not get overwhelmed, and it really, really stands to you to be able to do that, okay? And then you'll be ready to meet all of the challenges that come and to put your own mark on it. Now, I'd say whomever takes over after that, I'd love to and would happily sit down and go through as much detail as they wanted to and pass on what I could pass on. But they're broadly speaking what I would say, Joyce, would be the advice I'd give.
Leadership, well, within any organisation, but within a healthcare technology organisation, requires collaboration. What for you has been the most rewarding aspects of working with your team?
So look, just to say, you know, I've been so lucky to have and build some really, really brilliant teams and to work with some brilliant teams. And if I think of the COO team, even over the 8 years, there's been people who've come and people who've gone, and we had a few people who came in and out and some people who stuck through. And I will say this, it's been so rewarding to work with the team that's there now. And other people were fantastic as well, and they moved on to you know, bigger and better things. But it's, the people that I have on the team now, they're all brilliant in their own ways. They come from different perspectives, which is right and proper. They contribute different elements of the overall effort, which is right and proper. And I've been really, really happy. And I think hopefully we've been a happy team, but it's been really, really good to work with that team. The other thing I'll say about team is, you know, over those years, I've also worked then as part of the SMT. And again, that has changed over the years. And if I look back all the way 20 years, in fact, on SMT now, you know, massive change. I'm probably one of the last few. There's 2 or 3 of us left still around. But honestly, I would say over the last few years, several times the thought has struck me when we've been in either maybe crisis mode, you know, be it COVID or be it cyber, or maybe just some big effort that we needed to make. And I've looked around and I've thought, thank God these people are with me. Right? And many times, and I always throw in, there's always an Alex Ferguson anecdote or analogy for him. Alex Ferguson used to say, in the dressing room at Old Trafford in the early days, when he built the first league winning team, look around you, and I want everyone in the team to look around at the 2 people beside them and say, thank God they're on my team and not the other fella's team. And I have felt that so many times in the last few years. Thank God at this moment when we really, really need the best, we have the best. So I have to say it's been a real privilege to work with yourselves as the COO team and with the SMT team. It's been honestly one of the privileges of my working career.
Is there a particular mentor, perhaps colleague or experience even, that shaped your leadership style during your time in the HSE, would you feel?
So I would say one of the things, and I kind of learned this myself, is that it's been really beneficial and valuable to me to sort of learn from everybody that I interact with, and particularly those in leadership roles. And I mentioned about, you know, with multiple CEOs, multiple CIOs, CTTOs now in the last few years, and so many SMT colleagues over the years, and my own team and wider. And look, the truth of it is, sometimes you get on really well with people and you really admire and respect their work, and it's a bit different with other people. But one of the things I learned is you can learn from everybody, even the people who maybe are not top of your Christmas card list, and genuinely that's been really valuable. I have learned from some people, and we might not even see to eye, but others, obviously, maybe that you have more empathy with, you really learn from. I don't sort of want to leave anybody out. There's been loads of CIOs, and I've learned from the different styles of people. If I was to call out one colleague, I would have to say Seamus Butler. I would, because, and Seamus was sort of a mentor to me without him ever knowing it, if I'm honest with you. I sort of looked at him and I watched him, and I remember at the time when he was coming towards retirement, and it was an observation of mine that Seamus was the guy who sort of knew everything. And if I'm honest with you, I said to myself, the next 12 months, I think it was, or 18 months out from retirement, I said, I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can from Seamus. And I'm going to be the person who knows everything after Seamus goes. And I sort of did take, watch him and observe him, but I don't think he ever really knew that. And unfortunately, I probably never got a chance to say it to him, but I would call him out as just a particular inspiration.
With digital transformation continuing to accelerate in healthcare at the minute, what do you see as maybe the key priorities for the HSE in the coming years?
So we're in a good position at the moment, Joyce, because the priorities that can be digitally enabled or made happen through the digital advancements are really clearly set out in the roadmap. And that's been agreed by ourselves and at all levels of the organisation, the DOH and government. So it's a really good position to be in, right? Again, if I go back to where we were 7 or 8 years ago, I said we were an organisation, a digital organisation that was not fit for that type of transformation. So had funding landed out of the sky on us in 2017, we would not have been able to do it. So again, it's something that we can be proud of, is having built an organisation, built the trust, and now we've delivered a strategy that everyone is bought into. So actually what I would say is, we are an organisation, a digital organisation, ready now to make this happen and ready to deliver on the potential and the promise of digital for care. And look, I would say I'll be, as an observer, and I'll be looking in and cheering you guys on. It's over to Damien now and the team, to deliver on digital for care. And if I can contribute some way, in any way to that, I would love to still do that. But I promise I'll also be cheering from the sidelines.
Michael, what's next for you now? Any plans post HSE that you're excited about?
There's loads of things I want to do, Joyce. First of all, what I'm most really excited about is actually what I've described as diving into an ocean of time, right? And people who have retired have told me that the greatest gift that you get is the gift of time and also the gift of headspace, because I'm looking forward to some headspace as well. Work has come first, second, third, fourth and fifth, probably a lot over the last few years, and that's true of all of us in these positions, So I am looking forward to prioritising other things. What those things are, like travel, I'm very passionate about travel. We were in Morocco just last week, and I'm really looking forward to maybe visiting some family around the world and just seeing some other parts of the world and spending some time. Just myself and my wife go, doing a bit of travelling. Lots of other hobbies that have kind of gone dormant over the years, I would say. I did my family tree there about 10 years ago, and next year in 2026, the 1926 census, which is the first post-independence census, will be available and digitised. So I'm looking forward to do that. But to be honest with you, there's loads of small things as well. So like when I was just driving in here this morning to Dr. Stephen's where we're filming, and I was coming out of the Phoenix Park, stopped at the lights, and I looked over at the court building, and there was cameras there and people walking in with their hoods over their faces and stuff, and I was thinking, I've never been in there to see a trial. I'm going to go in there someday and see a trial. And then just a few minutes later, I drove past Collins Barracks, and I said, I've never been in there either. And I go to other places around the world, and you'd always make a point of visiting these museums or important kind of cultural sites. And I haven't been to some of the ones in Dublin. So there's just a ton of things that I want to do. But as I say, mainly it's about diving into an ocean at a time and being able to plan from a very different perspective.
Finally, Michael, as you step away from this chapter in your life, how would you sum up your experience as COO in one sentence?
So I'm not sure I'll be able to do it in one sentence, Joyce, but I'll try. But look, if I go back and say something that I said at the start about all the different roles I've had, including some of those private sector roles before I came into the public sector, but I've had 12 different grades and more roles than that. There's some that really stand out for me. Some in the very early days of my career where there were just brilliant crack, to be honest with you, and met kind of some people that are still in my life kind of today, and where we just had brilliant teams. And the one that but stands out above all genuinely is the COO role. It honestly has been a fantastic job. It is a fantastic job. It is full on. It is busy. It is relentless. It's never ending, but honestly, it's such a rewarding job, and I've been so happy to do it. And I think it's actually a great job, and I would highly recommend it. So overall, really, really happy to have done it, and I have loved being the COO.